as tensions between North Korea and the United States reach a fever pitch. It's worth remembering the origins of the hostility, the Korean War. The general parameters of the war are well known. The conflict began when Kim Il-sung's forces invaded South Korea in June 1950 with the tacit support of Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Kim's forces quickly overran their southern counterparts and were on the brink of unifying the peninsula before United States forces intervened under the guise of the United Nations. They quickly pushed the North Korean forces back across the 38th parallel and threatened to unify the entire peninsula until a massive force of Chinese volunteers intervened and pushed the American and South Korean forces back to the 38th parallel. Thereafter, the two sides settled into a stalemate that more or less persisted until an armistice was signed in 1953. Less well remembered, at least in the United States, is that America waged a mercilessly air campaign against North Korea during the conflict. As the eminent historian on the war, Bruce Cummings, puts it, what hardly any Americans know or remember is that we carpet-bombed the North for 3 years with next to no concern for civilian casualties. Indeed, Emmett O'Donnell, who led the Far East Bomber Command of B-29 seconds that participated in the bombings, described the plan as going to work burning 5 major cities in North Korea to the ground, and to destroy completely every one of about 18 major strategic targets. Curtis LeMay boasted that Strategic Air Command burned down just about every city in North and South Korea both. He also estimated that, over a period of 3 years or so, we killed off 20% of the population. And future Secretary of State Dean Rusk, who also served in the State Department under the Truman administration, would say that the United States bombed everything that moved in North Korea, every brick standing on top of another. The sheer number of explosives used is absolutely astonishing. As Tom O'Connor has recounted in Newsweek, the United States dropped 635,000 tons of explosives on North Korea, including 32,557 tons of napalm. To put this in perspective, throughout the entire Pacific theater in World War II, the United States dropped 503,000 tons of bombs. And that was throughout an area that was multitudes larger than North. Not surprising, then, that the historian Charles K. Armstrong has written, the U.S. Air Force estimated that North Korea's destruction was proportionately greater than that of Japan in the Second World War, where the U.S. had turned 64 major cities to rubble and used the atomic bomb to destroy 2 others. North Korea's lack of industrialization limited the number of enticing targets for strategic bombing. Consequently, as Armstrong again points out, by the fall of 1952, there were no effective targets left for U.S. planes to hit. Every significant town, city and industrial area in North Korea had already been bombed. This is barely hyperbole. The bombings destroyed 100% of Sinanju, 95% of Sariwon, 85% of Hongnam, 80% of Wonsan and Hamhung, and 75% of Pyongyang. Thereafter, American and Allied aircraft turned their sights to North Korea's hydroelectric plant and the 20 dams in North Korea that controlled 75% of the country's water, which was needed for agricultural and the production of rice. In May 1953, U.S. forces knocked 5 of these dams out, causing massive flooding. It also put millions in North Korea at risk for starvation, although the worst of that was prevented because of a massive influx of food aid from the Soviet Union and China. The bombings did cause widespread electrical outages, and by the U.S. Air Force's estimates destroyed all but 4 to 5% of North Korea's railways. As the official U.S. Air Force history noted of this time period, during the last year of the Korean hostilities, American air power executed the dominant role in the achievement of the military objectives of the United States and of the United Nations. No single air operation so gravely affected the communists as the simple destruction of 2 agricultural irrigation dams. For this operation, too terrible to execute in its entirety, pretended the devastation of the most important segment of the North Korean agricultural economy. Most outside analysts are far more skeptical that the U.S. strategic bombing campaign had much impact on the course of the war. The political scientist Robert Pape argues that North Korea and China's major concessions in 1951 were the result of the air campaign weakening their military forces' ability to achieve their objectives, coercion by denial, rather than the strategic bombing, coercion by punishment. Many others have argued that air power's most effective contribution to the Korean War was in the interdiction of enemy lines. In particular, aircraft focused on destroying the bridges near the Yalu River to cut off Chinese and Soviet support. Still, since these bridges were often heavily defended by anti-aircraft weapons, and the aircraft of the day had severe limitations, this campaign also had only limited success. North Korea actually repaired the war damage faster than South Korea, which had been far less damaged during the war. A more enduring impact of the bombing is that it has been used as a propaganda tool by the Kim regime to instill hatred in all their citizens from a very young age. As Bruce Cummings explained, every North Korean knows about this. It's drilled into their minds.